A kind old man from Lavender Town? Or a crazy scientist not aware of his capabilities to create the strongest Pokémon imaginable? Only to take over the world with his mafia boss leader, right? Not quite. The story of Mr. Fuji goes deeper than we all thought. Mr. Fuji is always known as a kind old man, a sweet soul that would never harm a caterpie. Literally everywhere you hear about him, it's always that he's so kind and it's freaking annoying. Like that's all there is to him. He's named Fuji, which is the Japanese name for the purple plant Wisteria. This plant highly resembles lavender, quite fitting as he's a resident of Lavender Town in the Kanto region. Although he's stated to not be a local, he's beloved by everyone in the town. His two portrayals depict two very different fates and lifestyles for him. In the games, Mr. Fuji cares for Pokemon so much that he's basically Mother Teresa of the Pokemon world. He takes in orphaned and abandoned Pokemon, giving them a home under his watchful eye and ensuring their happiness. When Team Rocket takes over Lavender Tower, they not only cause trouble, but also tragically dispose of Mother Marowak. Rest in peace. Mr. Fuji, being the selfless hero he is, bravely enters the tower despite it being swarmed by Team Rocket goons. His mission? To pray and help Marowak's soul find peace. Luckily, Red and Blue show up like the dynamic duo they are, and with their combined efforts, they manage to save the day. Mr. Fuji used to live on Cinnabar Island, which is kind of like the Silicon Valley of Pokemon research. Blaine, the Cinnabar Island gym leader, proudly displays a portrait of himself and Mr. Fuji, showcasing their old friendship and research partnership. Not only that, but Mr. Fuji is also the founder of the Cinnabar Island lab. On one of the computers, if you're a professional hacker like me, you can see that the Pokemon research team have gathered information on Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres, as well as Mewtwo. This raises a few eyebrows since Team Rocket captured those legendary birds, aiming to create a powerhouse, which they did before Mewtwo came into the picture. Given that Blaine was a former Team Rocket scientist who worked on cloning Mew to create Mewtwo, it's pretty safe to say that Mr. Fuji had a hand in Mewtwo's creation. This theory is further supported by Blaine's mention that the Pokemon Mansion still holds remnants of his old friend's research that includes journal entries detailing the beginning and end of Project Mewtwo. So in the grand scheme of things, Mr. Fuji wasn't just a Pokemon caregiver, he was also a pivotal figure in some of the most groundbreaking and ethically questionable Pokemon research ever conducted. In Pokemon Emerald, there's a mysterious note left on Faraway Island, the home of Mew. The note expresses a hope that only a kind trainer would set foot on the island, and is signed with a smudged name where only a few letters can be recognized. Something G. Now why on earth would Mr. Fuji be on Mew's island? Well, it seems this kind man might have been there to collect some of Mew's DNA to continue his cloning research, aiming to create another Mew. Seems that he was definitely working on the creation of Mewtwo, doesn't it? What would he be called? Professor Fuji? No. Dr. Fuji. In the Pokémon Origins anime, Red rescues Mr. Fuji from the Pokémon Tower, just like in the games. As a reward, Mr. Fuji gives Red a Pokéflute and a Megastone. Sure, it was a promotional thing, but it makes perfect sense that a scientist of Mr. Fuji's caliber would know a thing or two about Megastones. Unlike the games, which leave much to the imagination, Professor Oak straight up confirms that Mr. Fuji was a researcher and the author of the Pokémon Mansion journals.
That diary might be the notes of Dr. Fuji.
However, he supposedly left Project Mewtwo, which is curious considering Giovanni likely wasn't thrilled about it. He discovered a new species. This conveniently ties into his knowledge about Megastones.
And the old man who gave you these stones, Red, could in fact be Dr. Fuji himself. The proof lies in these stones. I It's just a faint memory, but I do believe that Dr. Fuji did some research on something like this in his earlier days.
If you've seen any Pokemon show or played any game, you'd know that everyone is terrified of Cerulean Cave due to the rumors about an unstoppable Pokemon lurking there. Mr. Fuji hints that he knows the identity of this Pokemon, a secret nobody else is privy to.
Sir, it looks like he's headed for Cerulean Cave!
My young Red, are you trying to catch that monster?
He even says that not even the champion, Red at the time, stands a chance against this Pokemon, despite having legendary Pokemon of his own. However, the stone he gave to the champion might be the key to success. Spoilers. It really seems like Mr. Fuji's deep interest and knowledge from creating the most powerful Pokemon ever led him to modify the Mega Stone. This modification could make a Pokemon so powerful that it could potentially defeat Mewtwo. So Mr. Fuji is a mastermind who might have engineered the ultimate countermeasure to the monstrosity he created. I like to think that this is why there are two variations of Charizard's Mega Stones. Mega Y definitely looks like a natural progression from its previous stages, while Mega X comes across as a dramatic mutation, even changing Charizard's typing. Could this be part of Mr. Fuji's plan? Dr. Fuji appears in the first Pokemon movie, and his backstory is heart-wrenching. Distraught after losing his daughter, he went to extreme lengths to bring her back, unable to move on from his grief. Instead of reviving his daughter, the closest he could come was attempting to create a clone from her DNA. His wife learned of his work and, thinking he was a maniac for trying, encouraged him to give up. However, in his unhealthy mental state, he made the poor decision to ignore his wife's wishes. One day, he walks to the dinner table to find a note, house key, and wedding ring placed upon it. His wife had left him, unable to bear his craziness.
I loved our daughter as much as you did, but she's gone. No one can bring her back, and I can't go on watching you try. Goodbye.
Despite this, he continued his work on cloning, driven by a desperate hope and an unwillingness to let go of the past. Giovanni is later drawn to his studies, leaving him with an offer he can't refuse. Giovanni offered to fund his studies to clone his daughter on the condition that he also works on cloning Mew. Dr. Fuji foolishly accepted, hoping to further his knowledge and find the secret to recreating life. Although, if he didn't accept, I really doubt that Giovanni would have just let him go. After his wife left him, his main goal is to see his project to the end. But at what cost?
I'll do anything to see you again.
Dr. Fuji and his team of scientists ventured far and wide in search of Mew or any genetic material they could find of it. At that point, Mew was believed to be extinct, even though this happens.
Huh?
They visited a site rumored to contain a Mew shrine. Their efforts paid off when they managed to retrieve a Mew fossil, exactly what they needed to continue their project. Dr. Fuji saw a new level of progress with clones of Charmander, Squirtle, Bulbasaur and Mew all thriving, alongside the clone of his daughter. Remarkably, they even started communicating using telepathy.
Not sure, but Mewtwo and Ambertwo seem to be communicating with the other clones.
But how?
They could be using telepathy.
Excitement filled the lab as the scientists believed they were on the brink of success. However, this was short-lived. All the clones perished, except for Mewtwo. While the other scientists were relieved, Dr. Fuji felt like he was back at stage 1. Yet, the mere glimpse of success gave him a shred of hope, and he pushed on with his work, driven by the desire to see his vision realized.
Everything seems okay, Doctor.
Nothing is okay. My Amber is gone forever. Only Mewtwo survives.
Mewtwo is finally strong enough to break out on his own, and he uses his psychic powers to communicate with the scientists. They are all filled with joy, and he questions them about his existence and origin. Dr. Fuji, unaware of the true capabilities of the creature he created, answers each question proudly and smugly, perhaps out of excitement at seeing Mewtwo completed. He doesn't consider how his answers might affect the Pokémon, who becomes increasingly enraged by the insinuation that Mewtwo is merely a science experiment, made by humans to be controlled and used for their benefit. In a fit of rage, Mewtwo begins destroying the lab, one machine at a time. Amidst the chaos, only Fuji and the flames remain. At that moment, Fuji realizes he will never see his home or loved ones again. With a lifeless stare, he helplessly feared his creation. Just as quickly as it began, that was the end of Project Mewtwo, and also Dr. Fuji's life.
We dreamed of creating the world's strongest Pokémon. And we succeeded.
In conclusion, it seems that Mr. Fuji managed to escape from Mewtwo after completing the project in the games, but he wasn't as fortunate in the movie adaptation. Personally, I find the idea intriguing that he might be researching Megastones as a method to potentially counteract or restrain the powerful creature he inadvertently created. It's almost as if he's seeking redemption or trying to undo the consequences of his actions. This twist adds a compelling layer to Mr. Fuji's character, showcasing his complex motivations and the ethical dilemmas he faces in the Pokémon world, which also explains why he's so kind and caring. Maybe he has really turned a new leaf. Thank you everyone for watching up until this point. I spend a lot of time making these videos, so a like, comment and subscribe really means a lot. I'm always looking at ways to improve my videos, which is what takes most of the time, so please leave a comment with some feedback on how I can improve. Also, let me know which part of Mr. Fuji's story was your favorite. My favorite was actually his last words in the movie before being taken out by Mewtwo. The way the line was delivered was quite chilling. See you all in the next one.